Hello, my name is Gurpreet Dhillon and I'm a professor of information security at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. The topic of our discussion today is denial of service attacks. We will be looking at what these denial of service attacks are and how can we avoid being part of the problem. In a denial of service attack, an attacker essentially attempts to prevent legitimate users from accessing information or services. By targeting your computer and its network connection or the computers and networks of the sites that you're trying to use, an attacker may be able to prevent you from accessing emails, websites, your online bank accounts, and so on and so forth. They rely on the affected computer to gain access to other computers. The most common and obvious type of a denial of service attack occurs when an attacker floods a given network with information. When you type a URL for a particular website into your browser, you are sending a request to that site's computer server to view the page. The server can only process a certain number of requests at once. So if an attacker overloads the server with many requests, it cannot process those requests. This is the denial of service attack. Attacker can also use spam emails to launch a similar kind of an attack. And this typically is done to your own email accounts. Whether you have an email account supplied by your employer or one of the free services such as Yahoo, Gmail, or Hotmail, you're assigned a specific quota, which generally limits the amount of data that can be stored. So an attacker generally sends large amounts of messages with big attachments which consume up the quota and thus prevents you from receiving any further messages. That is also a form of a denial of service attack. There's a category of denial of service attacks which are commonly referred to as distributed denial of service attacks. In a distributed denial of service attack, any attacker can use your computer to attack another computer. By taking advantage of the security vulnerabilities or weaknesses that might be inherent or exist because of carelessness, an attacker can take control of the computer, and then he or she could force your computer to send huge amounts of data to websites or send spam emails to particular addresses. The attack is distributed because the attacker is using multiple computers, including your own, to launch a denial of service attack. Interestingly, all the spammers typically use some kind of a denial of service attack in a distributed manner, because then they're not using their own computing resources to send tens of millions of emails to other people. It also becomes difficult for those spammers to be tracked if they are caught or if they are being reported. The question that always arises is, how do you avoid being part of this problem of denial of service attacks? Unfortunately, there are no effective ways to prevent being a victim of a denial of service attack or even a distributed denial of service attack. But there are steps that you can take to reduce the likelihood of you being engaged or being in the middle of these denial of service attacks. The first step in preventing denial of service attack is to install and maintain antivirus softwares. It helps you to identify attacks at an early stage and take remedial actions as time progresses. Installing some kind of a firewall and configuring it to restrict traffic coming into and out of your computer is also a good idea. And finally, good security practices for distributing your emails is very, very important. You have to have some kind of an email filter which may help you control unwanted traffic. The question then arises is, how do we know if an attack is happening? Not all disruptions of services are a result of a denial of service attack. There can be technical problems with a particular network, or a system administrator may be performing some maintenance on a network, and all those can lead to reduced speeds at which computing resources are going to be available. However, if your network is slow and the performance is low, then usually it is an indicator of some kind of a denial of service attack underway. If certain websites are unavailable on a consistent basis, that is another sign that there is some kind of an attack that is underway. Inability to access particular websites, which you commonly can be an early indicator that the computing resources are being diverted some other websites. And if there's a dramatic increase in the amount of spam that you are receiving into your account, that is also an indication that you may be under attack. So the question then arises is, what do you do if you think that you're experiencing an attack? Even if you do correctly identify that a denial of service attack is underway, it is unlikely that you will be able to determine the actual target or source of an attack. If that happens, the best practice is really to contact your system administrator if you are at work, who are going to take remedial actions around a denial of service attack. If you are at home, of course, then you need to immediately contact your internet service provider, who are then going to take appropriate actions. There have been several different kinds of denial of service attacks that we have come to experience over the years. One of the classics was the Visa Mastercard denial of service attack, and this is the case where some hackers were bombarding Visa servers and Mastercard servers so that they could not process the payments that were coming through, and hence there was a complete disruption in the online payment industry for several days till the whole problem was fixed. What you see in denial of service attacks is just this, at the surface it appears to be denial of service attack, but in many cases it's the information criminals in the background who are trying to either layer some transactions, or they are trying to circumvent certain existing controls, electronic controls that exist in the banking services. So if you have stolen credit cards and you want to process them, and you typically go and do that in a country which does not have online access to many of the processing systems, because you don't have it, you engage in a denial of service attack, and then you engage in some kind of a credit card fraud. These are known practices as to how denial of service attacks are used to use and abuse stolen credit cards. Botnets and bot herders are another kind of denial of service attacks. And they are distributed denial of service attacks, which typically come from a collection of compromised computers, which are referred to as in the literature as botnets. The botnet computer can inundate website servers with communication requests, legitimate or malformed, to cause extra trouble. A botnet-based distributed denial of service attacks are pretty difficult to deal with, because it can be very hard to distinguish legitimate communications from those that are part of the attack. And just blocking access to an IP address or offending computers poses complications in typical cases. So those attacks are pretty difficult to identify and manage. There are different motivations why denial of service attacks are performed by people. Ransom money is one, where they tend to seek to make money for getting the services back on track. At times they want to make a political statement about whatever their motivation may be. So there can be a number of reasons why people engage in denial of service attacks, or criminals engage in denial of service attacks. And most companies have been victim of that, from Twitter to Facebook to large-scale banks. They have all been victims of denial of service attacks at one point in time or the other. It's a menace to the computing world, but technological advances do not necessarily help. I think it's good management practices, good security practices on part of the users, which are the first line of defense against denial of service attacks. Thank you very much.